As the chaos ensues throughout the remaining passengers on Titanic, which was mainly made of third-class passengers and some first and second-class passengers. Around this time, gunshots could be heard. There's a lot of conflicting evidence or info about this gunshot, which will probably need a video of its own in the future. This supposed gunshot is likely believed to have come from Officer Murdoch, as the Titanic 1997 film depicts, but in reality, these gunshots could be heard from the stern of the Titanic and the front of the Titanic, as almost every single officer on board had at least a gun on them. As the water reaches the first funnel, it began to implode, causing the base of the funnel to become weak. This made the first funnel fall onto its side. It's unknown if anybody got crushed by this falling funnel, but considering people were in the water at this time of the sinking, there would had likely been a few people who had been crushed by the falling funnel. It was also this time when Collapsible A, which was one of the last lifeboats on Titanic, was launched off successfully at approximately at 2:15 a.m. The few remaining passengers on board of Titanic, knowing this information, decided that it'd be a good time to either jump off the ship or stay on the ship as long as possible. Most decided to stay on the ship for as long as possible. When the Titanic reached at its highest point out of the water, when the front of Titanic is also completely submerged at this point of the sinking, the music that Titanic's band was playing slowly faded away, with it being replaced with panicked screams of passengers. It's been rumored that the last song the band ever played was near God My D, but in reality, we will never truly know what the band's last song is before they had to stop playing. What's been verified is that Titanic's band played till the very end. All band members sadly did not survive the sinking of the Titanic. While the crew of Titanic and some passengers began throwing deck chairs, tables, cutting boards, basically anything that floats into the water. This was detrimental to the people in the water, as it helped them float and stay alive longer in the freezing watery conditions of the North Atlantic. Most of the lifeboats, if not all lifeboats at this point of the sinking, had left Titanic, with its occupants viewing her sinking from afar. For those who are on the water near Titanic, they would have gotten a glorious view of Titanic's 3 bronze or manganese propellers. Incredibly, Titanic's lights were still up and running at this point of Titanic's sinking, thanks to the firemen who worked so hard to keep the lights on throughout the sinking. These heroic men were not often mentioned on short Titanic documentaries.
As the stern rose higher and higher out of the water, Titanic's hull could no longer take the intense compression stresses being extruded onto the ship's lower hull. As a result of this, Titanic's keel began to buckle inward, pushing boilers upward through multiple decks. This caused the stern to abruptly fall out of the sky as it separated from the bow, crashing down into the water with incredible force. At this point, the ship had permanently lost power, plunging passengers into complete darkness, almost as if forced into a forever nightmare. It seemed for a moment that the stern would stay afloat, but the bow eventually began to drag the stern below the surface. With that, it seemed like only a blink of an eye that the Titanic disappeared. The shadowy silhouette of the stern retreated into the abyss of the deep, dark ocean, and the screams from unfortunate souls still strapped to the stern slowly mellowed into silence.
Those who watch from afar that are on lifeboats recall what the sound of screams in the water sounded like. Most survivors saying these screams in the water were very haunting and unsettling. Eva Hart recalls in an earlier interview in her life on how it felt as the screams slowly faded and vanished, almost into thin air. She also recalls her mother asking her if she remembers how the voices in the water faded. These are the type of horror stories you don't hear from Titanic, as Titanic itself has been romanticized to death. And with that, as the morning sun rose, a silhouette of a Cunard steamship could be made. It was the RMS Carpathia, one of the only ships to be able to pick up Titanic's survivors. The once great and mighty ocean liner Titanic, which was one of the most greatest and most luxurious ocean liners ever built, now rests at the bottom of the North Atlantic Ocean, forever covered up in darkness and slowly decaying away.